All right, so let's jump over. We're going to log into, it's going to be a QX200. All right, when you initially go to connect to the system, we have a LAN port and we have a WAN port. Okay, so you'll initially connect to the system through the with your PC to the LAN port. You'll connect to our default IP address. It's 172.30.0.1. All right, and you will type that into your browser, and actually before you even connect to it, you may need to set a static IP. I'm just typing it in here so you can see it. You may need a static IP on your PC, like a 172.30.0.100. Okay, that puts you in the same subnet as the QX LAN port. And then once you do that, then you can connect to the 172.30.0.1. All right, we do have a couple logins. There's a couple of ways of being able to log into your extension. For example, you can log in using the extension number and the extension password. I think I have this one. Let me just check it real quick. So you can log in with your extension password. This is what we call the user login. And I guess I got that one wrong. Okay, so let's try a different extension just to give you an idea. All right, so this is the user interface. I've logged in, and you can see access. We're going to look at this a little bit later in more detail. So that's the logging in with the extension, which you can enable. By default, it's turned off. And then you got the user login. There's only two logins. There's either admin or a second admin user, and it's called local admin. Local admin is disabled by default. So, and we'll show you where you can enable that as we go forward. All right, so you go log in and admin and the admin password, log into the system. And this is the dashboard. If there were any active calls, they would all be listed here in the middle of the screen. The top right-hand corner shows the time. There's a shortcut here, so you could go directly to a user's extension. Any pending events shows that you're logged in as admin, and there's your logout button. As you navigate throughout the system, you will see a help page that will follow you. Click on it, and it will provide information on that page. There's also a drop-down with the feature codes. So as you're beginning to get familiar with the system, you also want to have the feature codes at your fingertips, and has things like how to access voicemail, *0, and click on any one of these, and it'll give you more information. For example, also you can click on the top tabs here. So if you need more information on the Audit tenant, you can click on that, and it'll show you the feature codes that are available. Bottom right shows me the firmware version. I'm actually running a test version 6.2.7. Okay, so it has some enhancements in it that I've been looking at. And you can be logged in. It shows I'm logged in as admin. It shows me my IP address. You can log in multiple users, so you can have admin logged in. Three different users can be logged in as admin, doing different things within the menu or within the system, as long as they're not accessing the same wizard, for example, like the call routing wizard. All right, so let's start with the setup, the basic setup, how to configure the LAN port, and then also the WAN port. All right, this is a basic setup. When you first access any of these menus here on the left, you can see that the main groupings here on the left. We're clicked on Setup, and when you first click on it, it'll take you to an overview page, and then you can see what's in each one of these. For example, the top tab has Basic Setup, and I can click on any one of these and readily access it. It has a little description of what's on that menu. So you can either click on it right here, or you can click at the top where it says Basic Setup, and then it takes you to the first tab. In this case, the System Configuration Wizard. So we're going to, in this wizard, we're going to configure the couple basic PBX settings as well as the LAN interface. So if we click Next, it takes us through the wizard. The host name, you're going to be applicable to something to the customer, something that you're going to recognize it. So when you log in and that information will be displayed. It's also displayed when you go to download any of the some of your files, your configuration files, and things like that. That name, host name, will be appended to the file name. Then you have the IP address 172.30.0.1. That's the default IP of the system. You can change it if needed. You can enable the DHCP server, so that way the next time you connect on the LAN interface, where system will provide you an IP, and you won't need to hard code a static IP on your computer. Put in your location and your time zone, Central Time. Any emergency codes, for example, like 911, you can add those. I prefer to leave those, delete those. I think by default there is a 911 code there, and there's also a dial 9 access code. But I prefer to delete those, and I add those in later. By adding them here, it will create a route in your call routing table, and that call routing entry, it will go directly to the FXO port. So if you're just using SIP trunks, not using FXOs, then you're going to want to add those in manually later. All right, and then you get to the summary page, you finish, and it will go through, it'll check all your settings, and it comes back with a confirmation button. So you have to confirm your settings. You have 20 minutes. If you don't confirm within 20 minutes, it will roll back to your previous settings. Just keep that in mind. If you change the IP address, you'll need to reconnect to the system with the new IP address, and then you'll confirm your settings. All right, next is the WAN configuration wizard, or internet configuration wizard as we refer to it. So here you're going to configure the WAN port. Okay, you're just going to leave it at the default, leave it at the maximum upstream downstream bandwidth. And this is going to be the IP address of the WAN port. It can get an IP address automatically through DHCP, or you can hard code a static IP address in there, where you'll provide the IP, the subnet mask, and the default gateway. All right, the MAC address for the units, the DNS server for resolving names, for example, like www.epygi.com. It'll need to access the provider's DNS settings. All right, so again, you finish your settings, and then you have to confirm that. Next is your date and time settings. So this is has the current time. I can't change it. Okay, the reason I'm not able to change it is because I've configured my system to go out. It's acting as a client, and it's going out to contact our server, ntp1.epygi.com, to get the latest time, and it will pull that for the latest time every 6 hours and adjust the system time accordingly. So if I need to adjust this time manually, I would need to turn that off. All right, you can add other servers in here. You don't have to use ours, but there's a list of them. You can add your own. Many out there. Here's your SMTP settings for accessing, for sending. This is the system email account. Okay, there's a lot of opportunities for the system to send out an email. The voicemail to email feature is one of them, and there's a lot of people that obviously they're using that. So before that feature will work, you need to configure the system with an email account that the system will use to originate that email and send it on to the person's personal email account. All right, the personal email account is configured obviously at the extension level, but this is the system email account. If you're using Gmail, it's smtp.gmail.com. It's the port number that they're using. For my account, it's 587. The email sender address, this is the actual account that the system will be using. And there's a recipient address. It just so happens I'm using the same. But the recipient address is going to be any time the system generates, say, like an event log or a notification or something like that. It can send those to anybody that's listed on this recipient address. You can add more than one by putting a comma there. And actually, there's a CC address here. If it requires authentication, do so and put in the email address and password. All right, there's also the system can send out a text message using the SMS settings. So you'll need to configure the system to work with a provider that's going to send out those SMS text messages to all the cell phone providers. All right, I've been testing here lately with Clickatel. They've got a service. It's a paid service. You can go in and they're gonna you can sign up with them, and they're gonna give you an API ID, and they'll send out the text messages to your to the cell phones. System security. All right, this is there's 3 settings: low, medium, and high, not to be confused with your firewall settings on a system, which are also low, medium, and high. But the settings here are going to define the security level in the system. In other words, whenever it prompts you to enter a password, you're going to enter a good strong password based on the settings here. So for example, if I'm configuring an IP phone, it's going to make me enter a good strong password because I have it set to medium. All right, it's also going to want to run, you can run a security audit, and it will also check to make sure everybody, all the phones meet that minimum criteria of medium. So if you're in there and trying to configure a test phone in your lab, a test environment, and you're trying to enter a password like 1234 and it's not taking it, it won't accept it. First you need to come back here, set the security level to low, and then you can go back and add that simple password. Otherwise, it's not going to allow you. And I'll show you what I mean by that when we look at the IP phones. Licenses. Okay, so you can see I've got several licenses that I've added here in the system. Most of these the system's going to come default with all the basic features, most everything that most of your customers are going to need, but there's going to always be some enhancements. Maybe they want to grow the number of phones that are available in the system. So for that, you can add an IP phone expansion key, license key, say for example like 40 users. All right, so the way that the licensing works is it's very simple. You send the request to your distributor along with the serial number of the system, as well as the or the unique ID, and of course along with the key request, which license key that you're requesting. All right, in turn, they're going to send that key to Epygi, and we will get that key turned around to you in a very short time, usually the same morning. We'll get that key turned around and available to the distributor so they can give that to you. All right, let me just show you an example. So this is a key request for additional 128 of IP lines and a 16 port audio conference server. So, and it has the serial number of the system as well as the software unique ID. All right, so the key, the license key is going to be specific to that particular unit. Okay, so that's why it's very important that you don't order the key until you know for sure the customer's ready to purchase it, and make sure you've got the license key for the correct serial number or unique ID. All right, so once that license key is purchased, it is, it's been sent out. It's a purchased item, and we can't retract that license key. So as you can see, the license key here is very long. You will definitely want to copy and paste that license key. So you just copy it, Control C, and then you come in here and do an add, and then you go ahead and paste the key and save it. All right, it does mention here to make sure the system time is correct. It's mainly important for temporary license key, like a 30-day trial. All right, whereas all the other keys are going to be permanent, but we do have trial keys, 30-day trial. If you need to have that license key for a trial period, just let us know. You can also activate a free trial here within the system. It's a one-time use, so again, make sure the date and time is correct. You can set the expiration date and time. Set it in the middle of the night because the system will reboot to clear out those keys. And as I mentioned, it's a one-time use, so you go in here, you just enable all the license keys that you require, and then they'll be active and for 30 days, and then after that trial period, you're not able to come back in here and reattempt the trial. In that case, if you need another trial, you'd have to contact our sales team. All right, so that's available to you. Redundancy, you can have this, if this license key was installed, I would have redundancy. It's a hardware redundancy, one unit to the other. You can have one unit that's in hot standby shadowing the other unit. If the primary unit fails, doesn't respond, not available, whatever the reason, the secondary unit will come online immediately. It will have it'll be in lockstep with the primary unit, so it will have all the settings available, all the features and everything else. It'll have all those available, and when it comes online, it'll be the primary unit, and it'll take on the IP addressing and everything else that the primary unit had. All right, language pack. If you need, for example, like Spanish, you can get that from our support portal and upload that. All right, let's take a look at the extensions. This is the extensions management table. All right, so a lot to look at in here. There's so we start out with you can see all the extensions that are listed here on the table. 00, that's the auto tenant. You can add multiple auto tenants, as I have. I've added a second one, extension 11. So you can have, again, multiple auto tenants, day auto tenant, evening after hours auto tenant, different customers can each have their own auto tenant, so that is available. All right, then you've got the begins your extensions, your extension numbering, beginning with extension 100 and continuing on. And we will create some default extensions in there for you, and we will assign those to the what we call the attached line, which is either the IP phone, which is we refer to as the IP line. So extension 100 would be configured. You want to define the phone that extension 100 will be using. You'd go to IP line number 1 and define the phone model and phone type. All right, and then you've got the FXS ports This is a QX200 that has two FXS ports. So for example, extension 120 has FXS ports 1 and 2 available on it. All right, you may take a look at this and you may say, you know, initially you might not like the extension numbering that we provide. No problems. So you can just delete all the extensions, put a check over here, and you'll check everything besides except for the auto tenant, and you can just delete. You can delete all your extensions and start again. Okay, at the top here we see you can have a add multiple extensions option. You have to define. We use our extensions for a number of things. Not to mention the least, of course, is user extensions, but also auto tenants. Different features like call pickup groups, call park, paging groups, recording extensions, recording boxes. So we use our extensions for a number of things. So you'd have to define how it's going to be used. You can define how many extensions you want to create. So if you want to start with extension 100, or maybe you want to start with extension 200, and that first extension you're going to create, maybe you want it to be assigned to IP line number 1. If I were to enter this, it would create 10 phones for me, extension 200 to 209, starting with IP line 1 through 10. All right, so there's has going across. You can see the extensions number. You can put a check beside the extension. You can edit the extension, delete it. You can't change an extension though. You'd have to delete it and re-add it. Okay, you can add a new extension. There's a user interface and an admin interface. We'll talk about that more in a moment. It has some basic information going across the page. If it's configured with a external SIP server, you'll see the account settings. It shows how much memory has been allocated on a percentage basis. So 1% of memory equates to about 5.5 hours worth of voicemail storage capacity. Any options that are enabled for like external, for example, like call relay or third-party call control. Some credit. This was a new feature that we've added here for cost control. And then on the far right, it has the codecs. Okay, you notice as I move my mouse over this red, it says PCMU. It changes to a pointer, and it has an underscore under the PCMU. Anytime you move your mouse to that and you click on it, it will take you to a new page. So it's a shortcut. It'll take me to the codecs page for this extension 100. And so we've got on this page, it shows the codecs that are available within a system. All the codecs that are available for this particular extension 100. And you notice that there's it shows G711, both MU-Law, which is North American, A-Law, European, has G726, 729. So it has a list of all these codecs available. The codec that's at the top of the list is the most significant. Of course, in this case, I've only got one enabled. Usually you'll see 2 or 3. But on my extension, I just have the one. And that's why you have this option here. You can enable. You put a check beside it. You can enable a codec. Once it's enabled, it moves it up. I can move this particular codec. I can move it up. I can move it down. So the order, as you'll see in a lot of our tables, the order in which these are listed, these items are listed, is significant. It's important. So that's why you've got the move up, move down option. And I can make it the topmost codec, which is the preferred codec, so that when this extension picks up the phone to make a phone call, the codec, the voice codec that will be used is the uncompressed G.711, and that will be the preferred codec to give you the best audio. Down at the bottom, I've got some options for video. H263, 264, 263 plus, those are all disabled by default. So if you have a video phone, as I do, you'll want to go through and enable the video codec so you can see the video. Then there's some other options for method for sending the DTMF digits, whether it's in-band, out-of-band, whether it's supporting T38 for fax or not. So you got some options there. All right, going back to the extensions management table. All right, we've got the couple shortcuts here. One is the for the user settings, and one is for the admin settings. Okay, the user settings would be like what I showed you initially when I first logged in with the extension 100. I went to the user settings, and we'll take a look at that more here in a moment. All right, then you've got the admin settings. All right, so this is some settings that are only configured by the administrator, system administrator. So if I click on it, it takes me to the page, first of all, for the general. There's a tab here on the left that says General Settings. And this is the name of the user of the extension. Okay, this will also be shown in the caller ID when this user extension 100 originates a call. It could be just for information purposes. It could be a conference room, maybe a group extension or ring all group or something like that. All right, and then you see a password. This password is the user's personal voicemail password that they'll use to access certain features. Okay, you don't need to know what this password is. Actually, it'll look the same all the time. It'll always have the same amount of bullets, regardless if there's a password in there or not. Actually, by default, there is no password entered into any of these extensions. So even though that it shows what looks like to be a password in there, it's actually blank. Okay, the reason I say you don't need to configure this password is because the user will be prompted to change that password the very first time that they go to access their voicemail by dialing *0 or pressing the message key on their phone. It will prompt them to, number one, change the password if they haven't done so already. They'll be prompted to change their voicemail greeting message as well as their name for dial by name. The dial by name is used from the auto tenant from the extensions directory. So they'll change those three things: their password, their greeting, and their name. They'll record those, and then they can get access to their voicemail. The attached line, this is the extension 100, is associated or assigned to IP line number 1. I can move it to some other IP phone. You can see all the ones that are available. The ones, for example, like the FXS ports are not shown because they're already assigned to another extension. And you'll see up here at the top there, you can even it can be set to none, which we would refer to that as a virtual extension, and we'll talk about that more in a minute. First option, use kickback. Okay, this kickback option comes into play when this extension performs a transfer. So you receive a call to extension 100, they do a transfer, they transfer it to somebody's extension, and on that, the person that they transfer the call to doesn't answer the call. Okay, so it just rings and rings, and typically that call would end up going to the person's voicemail. All right, so if you have this kickback option enabled, instead of going to the user's voicemail, it will come back to this extension 100 as a returned phone call. So if this is a receptionist, they're able to talk to the caller, say, hey, so-and-so is not available. Can I take a message for you? Would you like to speak with somebody else? Would you like me to transfer, would you like to leave a message on their voicemail? Then you could do a direct transfer to voicemail. So it gives you a way of it's a more personal way of handling the call. All right, next one is call relay. So you're outside the office, somebody sends you a message that, hey, you need to call back this customer right away, it's urgent. And so the tendency would be to just go ahead and call the person directly from your uh, cell phone. But you may or may not want to do that. As soon as they have your cell phone number, then they're going to be calling you direct all hours of the day and night or sending you messages. Okay, so instead you may want to call through the system. And one of the options that we have of doing that is called call relay. You call in, you reach an auto tenant. It has to be a default auto tenant. And from there you can enter the feature code *2 for call relay. And it will prompt you for your extension, in this case extension 100. You put in your password associated with the extension, and then it's going to check to see if you have the call relay option available or not. And if it is, and you've entered the correct password, at that point it will allow you to make a phone call. So then you place the call, and when the person receives that call, it'll show the caller ID as if it originated from the office. All right, next one is Lao Gui Login. This is whether or not that extension 100 is allowed to log in from the main login page. If this was not enabled, I would not be able to log in. By default, it's turned off. All these are turned off by default. Allow third-party call control or click-to-dial access. That's an external application using an API where you can validate a request to the user's extension or extension password. And since there is some security risk with that, then you have to allow that. All right, of course it has to be done from the third-party call control application. And it will know what that username, that extension password will be. All right, show on public directory whether or not this extension is listed in the list of available extensions for the office. Very simple. It's an extension directory for the office. All right, use parent extension. And if so, if you have it enabled, which extension is it going to be associated with? Okay, they have all the extensions in the office. All right, this becomes real useful. A couple applications. Let's say you've got a receptionist. He or she might be on the 3rd floor, answering calls maybe all morning, and then in the afternoon they move up to the 4th floor, and then they they go to another desk, different phone, and they continue answering calls for the office. Okay, that's a great scenario for this feature here called use parent extension, and then you define where the parent extension is going to be. And so, for example, this extension 100 would be the parent extension would be extension 101. Okay, so you got 2 phones, 100 and 101. Whenever you get an incoming call, it would ring both phones. Okay, so that's a benefit. Of course, we've always been able to do that with a couple features, mini extension ringing being one of them. So that may not be as big of a deal, but when you go to originate a phone call, regardless of which extension you're originating from, 100 or 101, it will always show, the caller ID will always show as if the call had originated from the extension, the parent extension 101. Okay, any calls that are coming in, they would always go to the voicemail box of extension 101. All the features, all the controlling of any of the options, call forward no answer, for example, those will all be controlled by the parent extension. This also has a good application for remote extensions. So if you have a user that has an extension at the office, and then they also have an extension at home, and they share time between desk and office and home, then that's a great application for that. Percentage of total memory is basically how much memory you're going to allocate to this extension for the purpose of voicemail and their greeting messages. All right, there's a barge in. If you have the license key, you can allow this extension to be barged into. Okay, at this point, I want to go back and go back to the extensions list. Let's take a look at a couple of these extensions. I did mention a little bit about a virtual extension. Just you can see some virtual extensions here at the bottom. So for example, like extension 407, we refer to it as a virtual extension because it's not assigned to an IP line or an FXS phone. Okay, the only thing that so that's what makes it a virtual extension, but the virtual extensions that you're going to find, you're going to use them quite a bit. They have all the features of any other extension and any other extension. You know, it has voicemail, call forwarding, no answer, mini extension ringing. So what you're going to find, a lot of call scenarios, you're going to ring, have those incoming calls ring to a virtual extension, and you'll use that virtual extension to ring several phones in the office. And if it doesn't get answered, you might have that extension also be the general voicemail box for the office. So you've got these options that are available to you. Instead of ringing into somebody's personal extension, you can bring them into a virtual extension. Let's take a look at the couple features here. For example, like call pickup. Okay, the call pickup, the way that it works is if I'm sitting at my desk and it's after hours and I hear a phone ringing down the other end of the hall, the typical scenario is you get up from your desk and you run down the hall and maybe try to answer that call before it stops ringing. Well, there's an easier way. All you do is create a call pickup group. And so instead of all you have to do is pick up the phone, dial 151, and it will ring. It will answer any of the extensions that are in that call pickup group. And it will, if there's a couple phones ringing, you'll answer the phone that started ringing first. Okay, which extensions are in the call pickup group? You just click on the admin settings, and in the general settings tab, you'll see the extension list of the pickup group, and you just go in here and define which extensions are included in that group and enable those. Okay. So extension 100, 101, 102, any three of those extensions are ringing. All I got to do is just dial extension 151 and it will answer that call. We'll skip call park. Let's go to paging. So I can do a one-way page across the different extensions, across the speaker of several extensions. Which extensions? Again, that's going to be defined in this in the admin settings, extensions, the list of paging group. And you can define your extensions in here. For example, so if I dial extension 150, I'm going to do a one-way broadcast page across the speaker of extension 100, 101, and 104. And it's also going to you also have the option of calling out across the audio line out jack on the front of the unit. And that's available starting with the QX50, QX200. They have the audio line out jacks on them. All right, and that's used for like an overhead paging system. So you can do a overhead page. All right, the last one here is extension 200 is used for call recording, and on that extension, you can. I don't want to get too much into the call recording right now. It's a very easy feature to create. You just define which extensions are going to be recorded, and this is where those calls would be saved and where they get recorded to. You can click on it and go to the actual see all the list of all the recordings, and you'll be able to listen to those. Next one, extension 155 is call park. Okay, the way the call park works is you're going to use this a lot, so we need to discuss it here a little bit. Most offices will use call park. You'll have several call park extensions. I just have one defined, but you can have however many as you need. You can even have different call park extensions for different departments, and you can find those and add those to the keys of their phone to make them easier to use. So the way it works is you get an incoming call. You're speaking to the person. It's not for you. It's for somebody else in the office. You can park that call. So it's going to temporarily put the call on hold, and it'll be on hold and assigned to the call park extension. And you can put it on, you can park it with, depending on the phone model that you use, but most of them you could just, you can have a call park key assigned on the phone with this extension 155, and all the user has to do is just press that key, and it will be assigned to that call park extension. So if you have several keys, several call park extensions, the different departments, the receptionist can choose which call park extension they want to park it to. All right, as soon as you park it, that key will be lit on that phone for retrieval. That allows the receptionist to do to call the person, or maybe do a page or something like that, where they can notify the person that they now have a call that's waiting for them. And anybody with that call park key assigned to their phone, they'll be able to look down, that key will be lit, and all they have to do is press that key and to answer that call. All right, so there's your call park extension. Very easy to use. Going to use it in a lot of applications. All right, let's look at how you assign the look at the IP phones at this point. We've created the extensions.